So we see basically here what Matthew Henry is saying is that it's not a place of worship, but it's what number 3, the other view, is talking about, a church meeting place, a church meeting house where these acts of judicial things were taking place. So he says this is the only place in the New Testament where the name is given for a church Christian meeting place. The literal meaning of the word had no religious connotation, being used in Genesis 1 for the gatherings of water. Genesis 1:9 is where you can see that at. In time, however, the word came to have the definite religious overtones that John refers to in the synagogue of Satan in Revelation 2:9. It appears from the usage of the word that in Jerusalem, from which James presumably wrote, the Jewish name of the meeting house was currently used by Christians of their own meeting houses, a usage which at that time had no doubt already disappeared in most other places. Now, I believe the assembly in this text is referring to a church meeting place or a church meeting house that possibly met in a public location. James does not use the word ecclesia until we see James 5 verse 14. Within the given context of James 2, the example indicates that there were places of seating where certain persons could easily stand out, kind of like what you see in Matthew 23 verse 2. Now, whether there was teaching of the Word of God there, I don't know. Whether there was worship and singing going on, I don't know either. Theologians seem to hold different views when interpreting this text, as you can see, but it doesn't take away from the meaning of the text. Strong evidence that judicial matters took place in this location is found in verse 6. Also, by James using the word assembly shows that he wrote this epistle in the early part of church history. Whatever the case, we do know that it was a place that believers gathered for a reason. So application is what is important here. And this text can be applied to the happenings of today within congregations of believers, whether in worship or not. Again, when examining this text here, what is important is the application. The church is a location. The church as a location is a pivotal in not. The church as a location is pivotal in not judging on the basis of outer appearance. Remember that James is writing to believers. Believers are the church. Okay? Whether meeting in a home, a warehouse, the church should be visually, not outwardly judging. Now let's look at a comparison between the two Greek words to help us better understand why the application revolves around this behavior of gathering together. See, now the word transliteration, synagogue, it means a bringing together. An assembly of Jews formally gathered together to offer prayers and listen to the reading and expositions of the scriptures, assemblies, and of that sort where they held every Sabbath and feast day, afterwards so on the 2nd and 5th days of the week. Name transferred to an assembly of Christians formally gathered together for religious purposes. So you hear that word gathered. Meeting, assembling together. That's what you want to focus on in that transliteration there. Now let's see what it is with ecclesia. Okay, now in ecclesia, in the comparison here, you have, it's a common term for a meeting of those summoned to discuss the affairs of a free state. The entire community of all who were called by and to Christ out of the world, the church universal. Every church in which the character of the church as a whole is seen in miniature. They are an assembly, assembled to discuss the affairs of a free state. A company of Christians, or those who, hoping for eternal salvation through Jesus Christ, observe their own religious rites, hold their own religious meetings, and manage their own affairs according to regulations prescribed for the body for order's sake. So you see the similarities. And what you see is, you see gathering together, assembling, meeting. That's what the church does. If you are a Christian, you are going to gather together with other Christians. That's the application. Remember, we are one body. And see, a lot of people say, well, I'm gathering together if I meet in a coffee shop with Christians. No, you're not. No, you're not. Well, I'm discussing the affairs of the church. No, you're not. You're in a coffee shop. You are not gathering together as the church. No. Well, why is that different? You're meeting over there in a building. Yeah, but the sole purpose. See, that is the sole purpose of everyone that's gathered together. See, as a unit and a whole. The other people in the coffee shop, there you go. See, when you're in a home and you're gathering together as the church, everyone in there is unified for the purpose of what? Gathering for Christ. That's the difference. Very small difference? I don't know. That's not why I brought that up. Anyway, why examine the church? Why, Lord, should we examine the church? Why would James use an example with the scenario involving the assembling of Christians or the church? Well, in 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 15, it says the church is supposed to be the pillar and ground of the truth. Matthew 5, verses 13 through 16 says we're the salt and light to the world. And in John 13, verses 34 through 35, they say that it is a place where loving the brethren proves that Christ is real. See, this scenario is pointing out of what the place of the church is to look like. It is to look spotless and blameless, like 2 Peter 3:14 talks about. It is a place where people should be loving one another, like John 13, verses 34 through 35 says, or Colossians 3, verses 10 through 12. It's a place that James is addressing. We should not show favoritism. It is a place where we should be building each other up into the unity of Jesus Christ. Ephesians 4, verses 12 through 13. The assembly James is speaking could relate to this hypothetical example. They were probably predominantly Jewish Christians who were poor. Their oppressors were the rich landowners whose fields some of them had probably worked on. Now, as they met, they probably could have desired to want the rich men to come to their meetings in order to avoid the hardships of life and persecutions from others. They assembled together in other places because they obviously couldn't meet with James.